Greetings, beloved. Thank you for tuning in via YouTube and the Facebook page for this Wednesday's installment of Hump Day Homily. Yeah, we're starting a little something new so we can do something during the week to help you think, help you meditate, help you begin to ruminate on the relationship that we have with God and how God sustains us and keeps us and how much of a blessing God actually is in our life. And so for this first installment of the Hump Day Homily on this Wednesday, I'm gonna kind of look at the Old Testament book of 1 Samuel, the 8th chapter. But I want to start out like this. It's bad enough to think about when you don't have enough. It's bad enough not having enough. Think about that. In this pandemic, many states, many hospitals, and many healthcare workers don't have enough PPEs or ventilators or even spaces for sick people. Many people already, before this crisis, they didn't have enough because of the society we live in. They just did not have enough of the basic things of life. And now people like the homeless who cannot shelter in place because they don't have a place to shelter in. The poor, the working class are really struggling because they don't have enough. Now, please know it's not that there is not enough, because there's plenty to go around in this country and in this world. It is because a small group of greedy persons like the president, like politicians, like greedy corporations, they want more than enough. They want more than their share so that everybody can't have enough because of their greed, y'all. A friend of mine, Brian Ray, posted on his Facebook page that in this pandemic, in this crisis, we are all in the crisis, we are all in the pandemic at the same time, but we are not all in this thing together. Meaning some people have more than enough of what they need and more than enough attention to their needs than most of us. In other words, as Brian says, we are not in this thing together, though we are all in this thing at the same time. What happens when you don't have enough? How does it feel when you don't have enough? Well, it's bad when you don't have enough, but it is worse when you are not enough. What happens when you are not enough? How does it feel when you disappointingly discover that you are not enough? What happens when you are made to feel that you are not smart enough, not experienced enough, or have too much experience, which equates to you're not enough? What happens when you are not tall enough or short enough, not good enough, not sophisticated enough, not ghetto enough, not light complexioned enough, not dark complexioned enough, not thin enough, not thick enough, or your hair is not long enough or is not short enough. You're not old enough or you're not young enough. You're not rich enough or you're not nerdy enough, or you're not gangster enough. What happens when you are not enough? Families have fractured because some parent treated a child as if they weren't enough, and they put all of their attention on other children. This Sunday, I'm going to examine that aspect of not being enough in my sermon. And so just stick a pin. We're going to come back to that Sunday morning. But friendships have fallen apart because one of the persons felt the other person was not enough, and they neglected a loyal friend. Infidelity in relationships and marriages have happened because someone felt that the other person was not enough. And speaking of marriages during this pandemic, when married couples are forced to shelter in place together for weeks and for months, Someone is finding out that they are not enough. What happens when you are not enough? How does it feel when you are made to feel that you are not enough? It's bad not having enough. It's worse not being enough. But what about when God is not enough? Yeah, I said, what happens when God is not enough? For that, you have to look at the 8th chapter of 1 Samuel. Samuel, the last judge of Israel, Samuel the priest, Samuel the prophet discovers that not only is he not enough, but God is not enough for the people. The people told Samuel that he was too old. Now Samuel handled that bit of news fairly well. But when they said, we want a king, let us have a king to lead us and rule over us, Samuel became extremely distressed, and Samuel prayed to God. Yeah, after all that God had done for the people, they felt that God was not enough. They wanted a king like other nations had. They were looking at what other people had, and they began to feel that God was not enough for them. They wanted a king. Now, don't you start thinking tisk, tisk, tisk about them. Think about the times where God was not enough for us. There are decisions that we have made that we didn't consult God. There are things that God has required of us that we did not want to fulfill because there were other things we were looking over at the fence, be that cars, be that cribs, be that cash, be that your boo, or that person that you thought was made for you, and the red flags went up around your friends and your family members that said maybe this person was not the person for you, but you just knew that God had meant this person to be your boo and your bae, and you never consulted God. You just told God what you wanted and then told God to bless what you wanted, and you found out that God was really enough when that person got through with you and had enough of you. We have also been like the children of Israel, and it distressed Samuel when they said to him, we want a king to rule over us and lead us, because what Samuel heard was God was not enough. And so Samuel prayed. And perhaps that's the first place and the first lesson we want to look at, that Samuel prayed. Samuel prayed. And Samuel went to God in prayer. When you don't have enough, pray to God about what you need. Pray to God about what the things are that you need to sustain you. Because we know that God is a provider. Sometimes God provides miraculously through some anonymous person, and other times God provides by partnering with us to receive God's provisions. In other words, God expects us to do something to receive God's provision. You need a job, you got to go put in applications. Sometimes God will provide miraculously by anonymous sources, and other times, which are most of the time, God partners with us and requires of us to do something to receive God's provision. When we are in need, we first go to God in prayer. Pray to God about being treated as if you are not enough for someone. Pray to God about those feelings of rejection, feelings of neglect. Tell God about how people have made you feel. Tell God about it. Seek God's guidance when you don't have enough or have been made to feel that you are not enough. God told Samuel, they are not really rejecting you, Samuel. They are rejecting me. In other words, Samuel, it ain't your problem that's not enough. It ain't your problem. It's their problem. They're the ones that have a problem. And as my pastor used to say, don't let other people's problems become your problems. In other words, Samuel, you are good enough. You are cute enough, somebody that's watching right now. You are attractive enough. You are enough because God thinks you are enough. How do I know God thinks you are enough? Well, David said, God fashioned and knit you together in your mother's womb. God took time to bring you into being. God made you the way you are. God created you the way you are. God fashioned you the way you are. And when God got through with making you, God said you are very good. In other words, you are enough. And after all, if God is the one who created you in the first place, if God is the one who can wake you up in the morning, and God is the only one that does that, not your alarm clock, and if God is the one that sustains you and sustains all life, then what God thinks is more important than what people think. And it ain't all the people who feel that you ain't enough. There is somebody who feels that you are more than enough. There's somebody out there. There's a friendship. There's a potential spouse. There's a relationship. There are people out there that feel that you are more than enough. So don't get stuck on that one person that treats you like you're not enough. But there are other people that God will show you when you go into prayer, give you direction to find and relate to people that know that you are enough. You are enough. So pray about your feelings of how people have made you feel and tried to make you feel less than. Pray about it and let God remind you that you are more than. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. But then also look at how patient God is with us. God told Samuel to give the people what they wanted, which was a king. And they would have to learn the hard way. God gave them a warning. God told Samuel, warn them, you want a king? There's some stuff that comes with a king that you ain't going to like. The people didn't want to listen. Samuel told the people exactly what God said, that God is warning you. You say you want a king. You don't realize you really don't want a king. The people didn't listen. God said, give them exactly what they want, and they'll have to learn the hard way. Do you know that God does not have to take something away from you to punish you or to teach you a lesson? That God can punish you. God can teach you a lesson by just giving you everything you want. God can answer your prayer by giving you exactly what you asked for to teach you a lesson and punish you. God is patient with us. That takes a lot of patience, more patience than I have, and more patience than I think even Job had. When you encounter people who feel that God is not enough, you need to pray for those folk. Pray for them. And second, know that God is a patient God. God is patient, and God just might give them everything they want to show them and teach them that God is the only thing you really want. I also like how poised God is with us when we are problematic with God. God can be rejected by us, but God will not turn around and reject us. If we get rejected by other people, I'm done, I'm through, and I'm out. But God is different. We can reject God, but God won't reject us. They rejected God, but God never rejected them. I really like that about God, and you should too, because the Bible says we all were once enemies. We were alienated. This Apostle Paul said this. We were once enemies. We were all alienated from God, yet God still reconciled us through Jesus Christ. We were enemies. We were alienated because of the thoughts of our mind, because of the things we just thought we had to do and had to have, regardless of what God thought. We didn't even seek God, didn't consult with God, but God still reconciled us through Jesus Christ back to God. And so I like that about God. But finally, I love the persistence of God. God is persistent in God's love with us. God will warn us, but God will still be with us. You know how we do one another. We warn one another, say, I'm telling you, don't do that, and then I'm done with you because you did it anyway. Well, God is not like that. God will warn us. This is not really what you want, but God will still be with us. Israel got their king, and things did not turn out like they wanted to. It wasn't as good as they thought it would be. But God was still with them every step of the way. God kept picking them up every time things fell apart on them. God continued to hold them up when they would fall flat on their face. God would continue to call to them when they would reject God. God continued to love them when they turned their love to somebody else or something else. God continued to provide for them when they thought they could do stuff on their own. When you look at the whole Bible, God continued to reach out to us when we rejected God. God was persistent in God's love. God is so persistent that God allowed God to be put on an old rugged cross for you and for me to be sacrificed for us. We are living in a time when not only we find that we don't have enough because of greedy people, and some of us discover that to other people we are not enough, to this government, to white supremacy, we are not enough. And then there are those who for whatever reason, because of their choices, because of their desires, they don't feel that God is not enough. We live in a problematic time. But if you keep on laboring in prayer, if you keep on talking to God, using the sheltered in place time to be still and know that I am God, to consult God, to counsel with God, to let the stillness and the quiet in that, to let that begin to minister to you, and let the quiet voice of God begin to speak to you, and you will then experience that God is a provider, that God is patient, that God is poised no matter how we get upset and get all bent out of shape, and that God is persistent in God's love, that even when we turn away from God, God will keep turning toward us. God can handle it even when we think that God is not enough. We can't hurt God's feelings because God loves us too much. We can hurt each other's feelings, but we can't hurt God's feelings. No matter how we act, no matter how we behave, God still loves us. He looks beyond our faults to see our needs. And so I hope that you can meditate on that. This is my Hump Day homily for this Wednesday. I pray that it will in some way cause you to begin to ruminate on this relationship we have with God, and how God, most of the time, all of the time, is pulling more than God's weight, and how God has to carry us through. And so this is my Hump Day homily for this Wednesday. So make it a great day. Be encouraged, because I'm so glad the tomb was empty. God bless you and God keep you.